When COVID-19 struck in March 2020, the banking sector was one of the essential service providers that remain operational, although with minimum restrictions intended to stop the spread of the pandemic. However, the banking sector suffered the ripple effects of many of their clients who failed to meet the financial obligations on time. In return, President Yoweri Museveni advised commercial banks to provide credit measures to ease the burden by rescheduling loans to their clients. But according to the head of business at the Finance Trust Bank, Percy Paul Lubega, the commercial banks found it difficult to fully implement the president's request.
Directly or indirectly affected by COVID, and for that matter, be able to give a moratorium, a time when they should not pay back that money. Now, this was beyond the call of duty by government and the Bank of Uganda to do this, because it meant that the loans that would rather have been paid back would then be paid much later, and that means suspension of interest, suspension of all charges that the banks get, and yet the banks were not ready. There is no bank that could fully, for example, say we are rescheduling all the loans free of charge.
According to Lubega, some Ugandans took advantage of the situation to default banks despite the proposed credit relief measures.
Please give it to me, or 6 months or 3. Then you would calculate the implication of that and say, look, your installment will increase a little from 500 to 580. And you say, no, how? So because then we would have put some interest for the period. You say, no, I'll find a way of paying. Now, you could realize that actually they were taking advantage of COVID not to pay. Almost 80% of all people that don't bring back the loans will tell you they had a health problem, they lost a relative, they were sick, they have a sick child.
In order to find a win-win situation with their clients, banks intensify their campaign to ensure more clients use digital banking systems as a measure of encouraging the saving culture.
We still have this trust in walking to the bank, have a look at the teller, greet them by name, say hello, put your money there, and somehow you're sure that that is when your money is going to be safe. Now, this is something that COVID also helped to help us deal with, because people notice right now that it is important to access your bank account digitally. And what do? They help you save money on moving to the bank, but they also help you in instances like these ones to be able to make contact with your bank, access credit without necessarily you having to go physically, especially during a lockdown. Now, if people are saving and you're taking 10,000 shillings and your bank is it's in Mukono, if you look at the current pricing of transport, if you're to save 10,000 shillings, you would possibly spend 10,000 shillings plus closing your business to go and save. So the culture of saving has now been enabled with digital interfaces.
Because of the successes registered in these measures, banks are now discouraging their clients from cash transactions to avoid the spread of COVID-19.
Cash, one note of 10,000 can make movement around Kampala much faster than any of us. And the question is, if there was a COVID note that is moving around, how many people would come in touch with it?
Online business models developed in the advent of COVID-19 have thrived and are now blending into the financial sector, a move that banks are not likely to abandon.
I'll give an example of Cafe Javas. I don't know how they knew COVID was coming, but they launched an online, their own system that would now allow their customers to make, it was an app, I think it's an app, you make an order and you get delivery at your home or wherever you are. Every single business person, whether you're selling tomatoes, whether you're in the market, we knew that some people actually were doing it in the market. You make a call and they will organize the shopping for you. This is possibly what we need to do. The farmers down in the villages, in the rural areas that we see here have a lot of trust in government more than pretty other people. We need to ask ourselves, how do we continue sending produce to the market without ourselves necessarily being there?
In a way of supporting government efforts to combat the pandemic, some banks have waived off some charges of digital transactions.
But we waived off these charges to enable people to transact because we knew that this was a tough time. But that's as much as we could go. Otherwise, it would be so bad to waive off all the charges of all the loans that you have rescheduled and then collapse the institution, and that would be even a bigger problem.
Jingo Francis, NTV.